This is an incredible work of a young man whose insight and learning about his perfectionism. His perfectionism is conditioned by pressure from society, school, etc. But what is creating for him is an internalized anger that he's coming to terms with. I hope you get something from his work, and it's an honour that he's sharing it with other young men to learn their experiences.
In this Play video, this is the story of a young fellow. He'd come into the session and had an incident that he described as being unfair, and he sort of felt like shit, and he and a mate were mucking around, but they sort of got a disciplinary action for it from the teachers and the coordinator, and one of the teachers wasn't very pleasant. And so he felt like shit and humiliated. The little lamb represents the vulnerability, the feeling like shit, and the red figurine is the internal anger, really frustrated and indicated that it's internal, but it's also can be external. And we just inquired, had a conversation around the school experience, and then he talked about the pressure that internal anger puts on him, and I inquired, where does that come from? Does it always have to be perfect or something? So he then went and chose a symbol that represented the perfection, that perfect side of himself, that he's under a lot of pressure to be perfect. It all has to be perfect. The schoolwork has to be perfect, and it's the cylindrical shape, the perfection of that symbol. It looks perfect to him. And I wonder, in the inquiry, where did this pressure come from? And then he chose the eagle off the shelf, and he placed the eagle on the edge of the sand tray, just like how I've got it defined here. And that eagle is always looking over his shoulder. It's the judgment, it's the pressure that comes from his parents, teachers, friends, and that's a constant. And with that pressure, he finds it constantly there, and that pressure then kicks in his perfectionism. Everything's got to be done, especially his schoolwork. He said, look, if I write something on a page, and I'll rip the whole page out, and that may be a reaction from the internal anger that can kick in. And then I asked him, is there a symbol that might represent his kindness? And then he chose this symbol here, and that was his kindness. And when the internal anger's there and the pressure's there, he may not experience the giving of much kindness to himself. And then I then asked him to describe, can you choose a symbol that represents the sensitive side? And he chose that figurine there that represents the sensitive side. But these things don't get much airtime, particularly when he's got this going on inside and he's always under pressure from that eagle that's overlooking the pressure. And then we looked and tried to explore, where's the happiness? Where's the lucky go you, the happy? And so he chose Shrek. And Shrek is the fun-loving, happy-go-lucky. And Shrek's allowed to come out on social media. He sometimes can allow Shrek to come at home, but Shrek cannot. That happy-go-lucky can be tolerated. His sibling can tolerate it, but then sometimes may not tolerate it. The pressure can also, the perfectionism and the pressure can come from comparing oneself to the sibling. The sibling did well at school, and so there's a lot of pressure, internalized pressure on himself. And I said, well, what happens when the happy-go-lucky is not allowed to be having fun? And he said, then there's the sadness. And so I said, this seems a bit cyclical, and he agreed that it's a bit of a pattern for him, and he's always fighting that perfectionism and the internal anger I then said, well, where's your power? Have you got any power? And what would a symbol look like that shows you having power inside yourself? And then he chose this alien that's got power. And then we put Shrek in here, and when we put these two together, it cuts through the sadness and stops that internal anger. And he said when that goes away and Shrek's not there, then it just leaves him back with this sort of stuff and not giving enough opportunity for the kindness to come out. And the sensitivity is sitting there and it's a bit of a distance away. But it's really powerful to be able to discuss with him how important the social media, and as we are experiencing with a lot of young people, and particularly boys, they tend to get involved in gaming and spend a lot of time on their computers and social media. And by identifying that social media was the forum, it's the venue, it's the space that enables his Shrek to come out, and that's where he gets his fun and happiness and the connection with all his friends at school. Because unfortunately, at school, he walks home from school, and it's like the loneliness that some young men can face. Social identity, in adolescence, the most significant people in a young person's life is their mates, and that's a bit hard sometimes for him to have that contact with friends. And a lot of the perfectionism, a lot of that internal anger came from an experience at another school that it was really hard to leave one college and with a tall poppy in grade 6 or year 6, and then to move into another college, a different college, there can be a loss and grief, and learning to fit in. If you don't fit in, then you can be bullied, and sometimes at all boys' schools that can be the case. The burgeoning growth of the alpha male. And so, it was really interesting to how do we help him remain and hold his power and build that power and to enable more of the Shrek. And as we continue to work through this Tray work, I'm hoping that eventually he might be able to remove that and have that there more often, and be able to show to himself more kindness, and being sensitive is okay, and how to, instead of reacting to the judgment, how do we take that judgment away, and how much has he internalized that external judgment by parents, teachers, friends? How do we stop internalizing that? And I think and the experience of this Sandtray work was Shrek is that ability. Yes, it's okay to have a little bit of perfectionism, but sometimes that perfectionism can be really difficult because everything's got to be perfect. And what sits quite close from a voice dialect perspective to the perfectionism is the inner critic. It's like they can work hand in glove. If it's not perfect, the inner critic, it gives the inner critic the permission to come in and start being really critical of the alleged sloppy job. This young man, his work at school is brilliant. He's got a lot of talent, and if he can take the pressure off himself, and I suspect, as he shared, that comes from that internalized anger that sits deep inside himself. And that's how do we disempower the journey and empower this one that brings power with Shrek, that may then be able to take away or reduce. We can't always not be sad. Sometimes we have feelings and emotions of impermanence. They come and go. But to take away that feeling like shit, and to be able to have more happiness and more happy-go-lucky, and that would create more space in his mind, have a lot of a clearer mind, and to be able to succeed much better at his academic work. And I really appreciate this young man's permission to share his story, because he believes he wants to share it so that other young men going through the same process can maybe identify with this. And so I really appreciate and honour his story.
Thank you for watching. We'd be really grateful of your support because we're trying to build up a therapeutic library for men on YouTube. Please subscribe, share it with friends, and give us the thumbs up. Thank you.